Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and welcome to another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive, where we are here to talk astrology. And I think we'll go for, thanks for hanging out and waiting and being patient. Do I have any more goat yogurt in my lip? No, I think I'm good. I think I'm good. I either look like I'm in a grunge band from the 90s, except maybe a little too old. I might be the old guy in the grunge band, like how Neil Young was the old guy in the grunge band. Or, I don't know. I might pass for somebody like in the Castro district tonight. You know how they had the rough look? It's either that or it's either the old guy in the grunge 90s look. In any case, I am here, present and accounted for. And how are you tonight? Let's see who we have here in chat. Who's in the house? There's my man, Michael. What's going on? DJ MC, Jelena. Always good to see Jelena in the house. Ojos Azules. What's happening? 5DRG. Third eye activated. You'll be back after your live. Okay, we'll see you after your live. We'll be here. Tomas Joran, my man TJ. What's happening? There he is. Shadow, a.k.a. Benito Diaz. CC Jones, hey, friend, we hope that your procedure was swift and successful and that you're on the road to clear vision and beyond. There's Ryan, the international president of the International Introspective Woodworkers Union of the World. Now, just in case you're wondering, you don't have to be introspective to be a member of the union. Okay, they don't give introspection tests over there. I think really what you just have to do is be a thoughtful person. If you can demonstrate that you're a thoughtful person, you can be a member. Astro Motion, what's happening? Meow, meow, kitty, poop, poop, poop. Meow, meow, kitty, poop, poop, poop. Let's see. Pedrita Pebbles. What's happening? Paper Dragon. Oh, we got a birthday. We got an early birthday sighting. That means I got to find a birthday song. One that will not get me rattled with another strike. Let's see. Let me see if we can find a good birthday song. God, all these birthday songs have twerking. Are you into a trap birthday song? A mumble rap birthday song? I don't think so. Let's see. They have some shorts here. How long is this short? Hold on. Let me see this. No, that ain't happening. You're worth more than that. They got a 1 hour mix of the happy. Who wants to hear an hour's worth of happy birthday? That would be a bit much. Okay, now this one says funny happy birthday song. I don't know. Okay, now we're getting out of the birthday zone a little bit. Okay, I'm going to have to play the funny happy birthday song. Oh, here's another one. Happy birthday, Oriental version. Okay, my intuition says this one. Hold on. My intuition says this one for our birthday gal, Paper Dragon. Here we go. Now, I've never heard it, so this is totally intuitive. This is just intuitive. Here we go.
your birthday. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. It's your birthday. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
A birthday wish from this weird choir.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday.
Before you're old and you retire.
Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
You know what? That was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool birthday message. It said funny. It was humorous. I wouldn't call it side-splittingly funny, but it was humorous. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of campaign ads back in like the late 60s and early 70s, where they would use like pictures, photographs, paintings like that. I think Smith's cough drops used to do shit like that. They'd make their mouth and lips move. I thought that was a good happy birthday. There you go, Paper Dragon. Happy birthday. Happy solar return. Let's see. Thor at the door. What's happening, my man? There she is, Susie Born. Susie, I've not figured out how to liberate your original name from the ban, which I have nothing to do with. I did not ban you, Susie. I just want you to know that. But I will continue. I will endeavor. As they say, I will try to figure it out. Let's see, who else do we have here? Ani Brito. We got an Ani side. Ani Ma in the house. What's happening, Ani? There she is, the lovely and talented one, Dr. Joan S. Don't forget, if you want your Mercury taken out, come to Austin, make a vacation out of it, and have that nasty old Mercury removed. We actually talked about the history of Mercury and how it got passed and everything over the weekend. It was a good lesson, historical lesson. Let's see, who else do we have? There's Tom. Hi, Tom. What's happening, Tom? Let's see, who else do we have? Anybody else? Any newbies? Susan Chappelle. Hello, Susan. Kasha the Masha. What's up? W.C. Ray checking in. Oh, I saw this earlier. My Leo mom had a stroke 2 weeks ago, and we are relearning some skills. Dang, y'all, it's been a hard year. You know, it's really interesting because a lot of these older folks, a lot of them were not vaccinated when they were born or shortly thereafter. All the vaccinations started coming in hot after 1985. So people that have Pluto and Cancer and Pluto and Leo, they're still around, right? They're still here. But even though they're still here, not everybody is immune to the vagaries of a body that takes in all kinds of toxins and chemicals and preservatives and free radicals over the course of a lifetime. Not having anything compete with your immune system gives you a better shot at living longer and hopefully more in a more healthful state. But there's so much being poured into our current environment that even the hardiest of souls whose blood has not been tainted by the dreaded green monkey virus stands. It's just more. It's more of a battle of the trenches now. But some of the older folks, to me, this is very unprecedented. You know, both my mother's parents passed away. One was in her 50s, and the other was in his late 60s. right? And the older generation, even though they didn't have the same kind of, I mean, they went through the same medical protocols or lack thereof, but they just seem to pass away earlier. And now we're living with sometimes 2-3 generations. Like my mother is Pluto and Cancer, and then of course Pluto and Cancer, Pluto and Leo. So those would be the at least two older generations. I don't think there's anybody with Pluto and Gemini around. That would have to be really old. No, I don't know. Maybe Pluto and Gemini. That would be it'd be the 20s. They'd have to be in their hundreds. They have to be around 102. A few. There's a few Pluto and Geminis floating around here. Not many though. Glemma Spank, what's happening, Glemma? Good to see you. Kabuki Theater. It's going to be a good show. Thank you. I'm glad somebody believes in it. I'll take your advice and piggyback on it. LMM, what's happening, Leela? Good to see you. Susan, thank you for the comments, and I hope you're doing great as well. Let's see, Dave Sullivan in the house. Let's say in the mouse. Dave, have you ever been in the mouse? Everybody's been in the mouse every now and then. You know what being in the mouse is? You don't want to be seen. You want to be the mouse that's hanging out in the little mouse hole, looking around while danger is passing by. Everybody's been in the mouse at one point in time. Evangeline G checking in from Nashville. Hello, Evangeline. Robert Anderson, Mr. Anderson. He's here. Celtic Queen from Westchester, Ohio. What's happening? QC. Let's see. Well, Steve Borg Resistance checking in. Whimsical. The whimsical farm girl. Whimsical. Oh. It feels like a Seinfeld or a Larry David routine. Good to see you, Whimsical. I hope your new life is continue its whimsical path. Peter Bayonne, what's happening, brother? Good to see you here. Let's see, who else do we have? Oh, yes, Marge will be back. When our live is over, Marge will be back. We'll be waiting here. Nugs, what's going on? NUGGZ, what's happening? Yes, you can buy me a cup of coffee at the link Ryan had. And the cup of coffee link is in the description for the show tonight. As always, and please hit the like button and also subscribe. Even if you have subscribed, subscribe again, because there's a really good chance you've been unsubscribed. And that's how they play the game around here. So hit the likes. We are in a battle with the algorithm. And my good friend Ryan pulled me aside. He pulled me aside. He said, man, you gotta pump the likes more. He even gave me an example of a show that pump the likes more. So it's like when Ryan talks, he may be introspective, but when he talks, I listen. Let's see. Who is Susie Stupid Fingers? No, I'm just giving her a time, March. Integrity and Karma. I and K. There's Liddy Lou checking in from somewhere in Texas. I know where she is. I know where that Liddy Lou is. I'm telling you, boy. Beautiful family. Met her daughter. Met Liddy Lou. Well, I met her last year. Wonderful people. You give Texas a good name. Sue is here. Hello, Sue. What's happening? Ms. Behaving too. BK. How's my mom? Should I yell into the other room and ask her? She's good. She's good. She's going to physical therapy, and she's practicing her independence by taking a Lyft. I use Lyft. I know they're both the fucking same, but I'm just a contrarian. Everybody uses Uber. I use Lyft. It doesn't really matter because the drivers will flip the signs. So anyway, she's been practicing some of her independence by using Lyft to go to her physical therapy. And when she does, she gets to talk to the drivers, and they give her all the lowdown of what's happening locally. She knows more about what's happening locally than I do. Let's see, David Hawk. Yeah, we were talking about that, David. Weren't they threatening to change the time forever? Pussies. Fucking time pussies. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Joe Burrow Houday. Oh, we got a Bengals fan in the house. Bengals fan and Tiger. Isn't that interesting that Joe Burrow played for the Tigers and the Bengals? Yes, indeed. And didn't the Tigers win the championship in the year of the Tiger? Although that was last year. Last year, wasn't it? No, it wasn't last year. And he's been in the pros, 3 years? Anyway, there is a title Bengal connection there. Lisa Ann White. What's happening? Fine apples. Christine Mose. What's happening, Christine? Sheila Sampson. Brandy. Herrera. Brianna Eves. GFX. Good to see you, of course, as always. Artiseer. Artiseer is here. Good evening. Dawn is here. Scuba Kel's in the house also. What's going on, Scuba Kel? KCMC. Did anyone hear about Bill Gates' rumors of being charged with child rape? It's been floating around the internet. The internet has been reporting this, that Bill Gates is going to be arrested for child rape. We'll see. Or we won't. And even if he is, maybe we won't. Who else do we have here? Janet Nepal. Hey, Janet. Welcome to the show. Who else do we have here? It's my birthday today. Well, the whole world is on fire. Hey, man, the world is on fire. Have the world light the candles. That's all you got to do. Just stick your candles out into the world. Say, thank you, world. Thank you for lighting my candles. It's my fucking birthday. Now have a piece of cake and join me. That's how you do it right there. Let's see. Steve Ward, 100 loads of manure haul today. I am the grunge king. Okay, Steve, you can wear that crown. You can wear that crown. Who else do we have? If it wasn't for the Crusades, we'd probably be Muslim. Maybe. I think you might also have to look at what the Spaniards eventually did when they kicked out the Muslims and the Moors before they encroached even further north out of Spain. But I would say that's a big maybe. Who else we have? Let's see. Jeff Rosen videos. Woke Ones Revolution from Wichita. What's happening, Woke Ones? Joan W. Let's see. We got a Bo sighting here. There's Bo, Mr. Kabuki Theater. What's going on, Bo? Who else? We have Kelly and Kids. K and K. Saturn is direct. Yes, we're going to talk about a little Saturn direct tonight. The Vandals birthday song. I can't. There are lots of birthday songs I'd like to play in here, but unfortunately, I will get hit with copyright strikes, and I can't do that. I want to keep this channel open. They've trained me well. Cynthia Kluth is here. Hello, Cynthia. Leon Vito Vincent Radway. Leon Vito Vincent Radway has joined us. The Count has arrived. Let's see. A terming birthday is truly the collapse of civilization. A twerking birthday song. Twerk is a bad word. I don't know if it's a bad word. Let's see. Twerking. There you go, Andy. I knew you were going to correct it. Diane Evans is here. Hi, Diane. Hello, Diane. Fair, most are tweaking while twerking. Ain't that the truth? Element's feeling a little bit emo today. A little bit emo. What would you put on if you're feeling a little emo? What kind of music would you put on if you were in emo land? So that's a genre I did not get into all that much. Alice in Chains was great. Alice in Chains was badass. Lane Staley, Jerry Cantrell, badass. Let's see. My birthday will be next week. You have time to look at Kelly and kids. She wants me to put some work into this. He wants me to, you know what, Kelly? Maybe I'll make a birthday song for you. Wow. Maybe I will make a birthday song for you. Never know. Let's see. 5DRG. We're just going through the whole roll here. Who else do we have? Healing Heart Rosie. We're glad to have you and be here live too. As well. Let's see who else. Anyone see Grant Hancock interview Mario Biglino? Pretty good. I'm convinced the Elohim are definitely not gods or angels as we conceive of them. Yeah. I don't know. Graham Hancock is not my favorite flavor. He feels a lot like a gatekeeper. That's just my instincts. Now, if he was sitting across from me, would I accuse him of being a gatekeeper? Maybe not directly, but we'd have a conversation about certain things that he doesn't talk about. Let's see. I am very kind. Well, I have 3 planets in Libra. They help me. They help smooth out that Scorpio rising. Let's see. Who else do we have? And we all die young. And we die young. We die young. I guess if you die young, you'll leave hopefully a good-looking corpse. You guys are great. They are great. Heron from Kyoto. We have Kyoto in the house tonight. How about that? How about that? Welcome. Welcome. Oh, here we go. Major breaking real estate news. National Association of Realtors loses lawsuit with plaintiffs winning $1.78 billion over conspiracy to inflate commissions. That's from Southwest Florida Real Estate with Lewis Walden, who now has a new job. He's making an honest day's wage. Thanks for sharing that, Lewis. Violet Aurora Myths. A very intriguing name. Let's see. Is Susie born? Susie Gemini? Yes, she is. I can confirm that. You don't need a digital ID for that. I can confirm that. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Tondar. What's happening, Tondar? Yeah, pretty caught up. Francine W. Hello, Robert. Enjoy your show and finally saying hello. Well, Francine, I'm glad you enjoyed the show, and I get to say hello back. Great group here tonight. Yes, there is. A fine collection of robust souls. Enjoying the Rumble content. Well, Rumble was not cooperative on Thursday. Rumble was deleting people's tweets, stalling the stream. Boy, Rumble had some agents. Let's see, 11th house. My Leo mom had a TIA mini stroke 2 weeks ago, and she's 81. Yeah, so yeah. So there's a couple things here. Number one, in 2020, we all heard about the horror stories of elder care centers and assisted living centers. And we've heard about those horror stories for a while, but there were horror stories even before 2020 when, they would have like the video, the CCTV video of these elderly people being beaten up by orderlies and shit like that. So it's a rough environment to put your parents in. So that said, my mother had a pacemaker put in back in, what was that, June, July, I think probably around August, around August. She spent about a month in this kind of recovery care center in town. I have to say they were really, really good. And not all of them are the same, but they were good. They helped pull her out of a tailspin and get her back on her feet. So it's hard if you're caring for your parent. And again, I sort of stumbled into the fact that Texas has some really good resources for kind of elder care. I'm just like, wow. I didn't experience that in California, but then again, she didn't live with me. Okay, who else do we have here? Katie Barton just ordered sushi takeout. Finally got a new job. Woohoo! Congratulations. Katie Barton is celebrating with a little raw fish tonight for her new job. I hope it's a good one that you enjoy. Baby had a chocolate party with my mom today while I helped my dad outside. That's some American family stuff right there. Chocolate party with the mom. You go outside with dad and help dad. That's how you do it. Let's see. The Scaled Raven. Greetings back at you. The Friday show with Russ Winter was great. I think it was the best show Russ and I did. It was the best show Russ and I have done. And I really liked the end of the show where Russ talked about how Bobby Knight actually asked Russ's dad. Russ's dad was one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. Russ's dad is in the Basketball Hall of Fame, the recipient of 7 championship rings that he won when he was coach of the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers. And Bobby Knight respected Russ's dad enough to ask him, like, how do you do it? How do you stay patient and calm? And much to, I think I'm paraphrasing here, much to the credit of Tex, Russ's dad, he kind of talked for a while and he said, look, it's a little late for that, Bob. But it's okay. It's okay. For Bobby Knight, nobody told Bobby Knight what to do. So for Bobby Knight to reach out to Russ's dad and ask him how he could improve and keep his cool, that's kind of a big deal. That's a lot of respect. Julia Payne just started watching Winter. Awesome. Yeah, I love Russ. Road Trip 1981. What's going on? Julia Payne from New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere. Wow. We got New Zealand. We got Kyoto in the house. We got McKinney, Texas in the house. SL Sully. What's that with an SL? Let's see. Who else do we have here? Grace Gravity. Glad to make it live. We're glad you made it live. Evan Nathaniel Grimm. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. Excited for the show tonight. Lapetius. Hi, Lapetius. Got a good crew in here. Lunchbox 81. Christine OG. Albruna. No, we're still just going through the mentions tonight because there's so many good mentions here. It's better than pumped with chemicals and adapted and morphed. Is it better or trying to keep our systems clean and strong? That's a question for. I think we all have to keep our systems clean and strong. I don't think anybody gets out of that. Rita Perea. What's going on, Rita? Boy, there's a lot of expectations. I feel a lot of pressure now about this show. I wasn't feeling so much pressure before. Now it's just like, man, everybody's excited. They can't wait for it. And I've got all this. I'm starting to feel pressure. I don't know. I've got to depressurize somehow. No, I don't feel pressure that much. But I do hope that the information I share with you is both revealing in some ways and can help us. The whole thing is looking at the past and patterns of the past and seeing how this is one of the things that astrology can do almost hands down better than any other system. And hopefully tonight, when you're done, or when I'm done, and we look at this, we can look at where we've been in the past, and we can look at possibly where we're going in the future based on astrological cycles, symbols, which are prevalent, and what else can we throw in there? I would say the rising tide of consistent yet predictable propaganda. You throw all those together and we get a big picture. Now, there's always going to be the fractals of the big picture, but that's what we're going to try to get into tonight. So why don't we start with, let's get into the chart of the day. By the way, you guys are a great group tonight, and I want to thank you all for being here. Okay. Why don't we do this? Let me cook up a chart here for where we are right now. Okay. Now, before we get going, I do have to make a bit of an announcement. Yeah, what time is it? Let's do 7 p.m. All right. Okay. There we go. All right. I think I have it. The Virgo fact checker is satisfied. There we go. All right. That's us. Right there. Sun 13 Scorpio. And getting close to that Sun-Mars conjunction. We're a mere 4 days away from it. And we've talked about how rare, I think we had the Sun-Mars conjunction in Libra, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Well, I have to go back. It was very close. But it's rare when you have Sun-Mars conjunctions. And it's even rarer when they're in Scorpio. That is a rare feat. And then you throw in, Uranus isn't going anywhere, right? So by the time the sun catches up with Mars, what I think it's going to be right around, I think it's around 21 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. And in the opposition of Uranus, that is explosive. It's explosive. I think it's fraught with danger. And I'm not a guy given to hyperbole. Or, I mean, maybe every now and then. But I try to keep the doom scale down, or the doom rating down. That's a pretty high doom rating, I have to say. That's, if we're talking a scale of 10 being like duck and cover, and 1 being like call me when it happens. I think it's somewhere in the 7 to 8 range. And it's just the nature of the aspect itself. Okay, so what's really interesting is a lot of times astrologers, and this is the thing that I've battled against for a long time with astrology. When I started to do this consistently, starting in 2008, 2009, the astrological landscape was really different, really, really different. It was way more woo. There was more woo, and it was more inclined to interpret aspects from what I would call like a more of a new age perspective. And they would use words like, divine feminine, and phrases like divine feminine, and transcendent transformation. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with those phrases, but it was almost like a superimposition of an ideology onto astrology. And we all have our biases and we all have our lenses, and including me. But when I started to do this, that was really the predominant sort of lens that astrology was being looked at through. So what I tried to do early on was to kind of break the mold, and at the very least look at aspects in a way that took them out of the context of whatever kind of projection was going on at that time. And there was a lot of projection going on at the time. Now remember, this is also the beginning of Obama, and there were a lot of people who had extremely high hopes for Obama. And I remember there was this one guy who was a columnist in San Francisco. Oh God, he wrote for, I think he wrote for the Chronicle, or he wrote for the Weekly, one of the two. And he was saying, this was very early on, he was singing Obama's praises because there was a person who knew more about these things than he did. And she said that this guy is special. He's different. And that's all you needed to know about the astrological environment in some ways in 2008 and 2009, because people were projecting onto this individual all of their hopes and dreams and wishes and fears and aspirations and desires, all those things, right? And given the fact that people theoretically knew his birth time, that he was a Leo, and it was in their minds, kind of a major change from George Bush, who was a Cancer, and connected to this organized political crime family. Although back then they would never say that. They would never really say that. They weren't that advanced back then, unless you were hanging out in the deeper folds of the conspiratorial world, in which case it's exactly who they were, and you knew it. You just knew it. But it was a contrast from Bush, and a contrast from 8 years of these foreign incursions into places like Afghanistan and Iraq. Little did people know at that time where it was just going to get bigger, and it was going to grow. It was going to metastasize. So people were looking at Obama through these rose-colored glasses. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. And I was not one of them. Instinctively, I knew that there was no way that anybody could live up to that hype. And immediately, my gut, when this guy first crossed my screen, my gut was, oh, not good. Not good. But even so, I would say, if he repeals the Patriot Act, and if he gets troops out of Iraq, then I will change my mind. Like, that was my litmus. So even though I had made up my mind, he was still, in my mind, open for redemption. He just had to do those two things. He never did them, even though that's what he campaigned on. So once he didn't do those things, well, it confirmed everything that I thought about Obama. I just gave him a bit of an out. Okay, you get a bit of an out. But that's how astrology was evolving, or at least that's the way it was at that time. And I was a blogger before I was doing a lot of the live streams. And so I was working this stuff out via the written word and lots of charts and, pulling stuff out of the charts. It was very rigorous work, but it was worth it. And I'm just bringing this up because how would somebody, given that kind of sort of rose-colored glasses effect with a high degree of bias, look at this Uranus opposition with the Mars-Sun conjunction in Scorpio? Could they actually put a rose-colored spin on those glasses? I don't think so. I don't think so. So then, then it becomes kind of up to us as to how we determine this, particularly given what's going on in the world. And what's going on in the world is that it's not a very, long hop, skip, and a jump to see that this aspect is explosive. It's very explosive. And the world is a tinderbox right now. Whether you're on a campus in America or somewhere in Europe where you're protesting and you're taking the anti-Palestinian stance, or you're somewhere in the Middle East or somewhere near the border, the world is a tinderbox. Somewhere in Europe, it all takes is one little match to set it all off. And we can look at this opposition from another perspective. Jupiter's playing a role as well. Now, Jupiter will be on it's retrograding, so it'll be on the kind of the outer rings of the opposition. It's there now. It's opposing the sun, right? And how I see both these retrogrades, especially as it's related to things like resources, at a high level, at a very high level, talks behind closed doors. I guarantee you, the resource game is being dealt out. It's like what you will get or you won't get if you don't act. That's what we're dealing with here. With that Jupiter retrograde, that's all in play right now. Right? It's like it's whatever happens with this opposition with the Sun, Mars opposing Uranus, Jupiter's already in the discussion. Jupiter's in the breakdown, and it's all about resources. It's all about resources and finances and who gets a seat at the table and who doesn't get a seat at the table. And I'm assuming that it can go both ways. So, for instance, if somebody wanted to kind of, hold the sword of Damocles over Israel, they could say, look, you need to do a ceasefire or else you're not going to get any more money. That would be an effective tool if that's what the administration and or the EU and or any entity would want to do, right? They would say, sorry, you're not going to get any more until, the bombs start dropping, the drones stop flying, and the tanks stop rolling. That would make sense. That said, there's also the other side of that, which would be the counter. The counter would be something along the lines of, well, if you're going to stop the money that we need to fund this war, we just happen to have some vital information of things that have gone on behind the scenes with a number of American officials. Oh, what's that all about, right? Yeah, it's called the Epstein files. So this is what we're jockeying with here. Again, this is global. This is not me and you, right, or your life, although we could probably break it down so that you can understand it personally. This is bigger stuff. This is much bigger stuff. Yeah, we just happen to have a few, we probably got about 5 minutes of videotape, and boy, it's really something. You were really Jungle Jim that night, weren't you? Right? I mean, that's how this stuff goes. So you have behind the scenes these resources, right? It's retrograde. It's like, well, we'll take this away. Well, if you take this away, we'll reveal this, right? I mean, on a personal level, we're dealing with banking institutions. There were 5 banks over the course of last week, starting on Friday, it's always Friday, that we're having a hard time processing deposits. I don't know if they got some or not, but they're having a hard. This is all Taurus, Scorpio stuff. So it's already in action now, right? It's already in action. And whatever is agreed upon and or negotiated, that's what's going to show up when the Sun-Mars conjunction hits and it's opposite Uranus. And it could be what's negotiated or what somebody didn't get. And it's like, oh, we didn't get that. Here you go. This is a reminder. This is a reminder of what we needed, and you weren't listening to us. So this is a very, again, I'll use the word explosive. Now, wouldn't it be great if absolutely nothing happened? What'd be even better is if something was going to happen and somebody stumbled along and stopped it from happening. That would be even better. That would be even better. A little disclosure. And sometimes with Scorpio, you can get disclosure. You can get disclosure. Okay, let's throw in a little woo. So we have Neptune up here in Pisces. And we'll call Neptune and Pisces, the Deus Ex Machina, right? The spirit of the machine, or the ghost of the machine. Neptune will play this role. And so as we have the Sun and Mars moving more into a tighter trine, which it will with Neptune as it opposes Uranus, there is a hint here, and we've got another retrograde planet. There is a hint here that perhaps through some unwitting divine intervention, things don't go according to plan. Now, what do I mean by unwitting? I've talked about this before. There are many times that there can be events in the world that could have happened, but didn't. Like a whole timeline of historical disruption has been rendered inert by simple little things. The simplest of things, not perhaps anything great, but something simple like somebody getting stuck in a red light versus a green light and another red light, and it disrupts the timing, or somebody stumbling upon what looks like, for all intents and purposes, a minor infraction or minor offense, and then as a result of that minor infraction and minor offense, they go through and they do a background check, and all of a sudden, whoa, who is this person? What are they doing? Right? So I guarantee you, because, everything we see, both in terms of what we call bad and good, is not the whole picture, right? So, a lot of times we'll see these events, which we like to call false flags or psychological operations, and many of them are. Those are the ones we see. And some of the ones we see are even ones that we've seen that may not have gone off in the way that they have. I'll give you an example. It was the guy who was the shooter in the in the mall in Indiana. Do you remember that? It happened, I think it was last year. And this guy was in the bathroom for like 3 hours or something like that. So, hour and a half, hour and a quarter, like really a long time. And he went into the food court finally and was going to start shooting people in the food court. And he was there, and this guy was there who was carrying. And he took him out. And you never really heard much about that afterwards. Never heard much about that. The reason why you never heard much about it was because somebody's plan didn't work. It did not go according to plan. And to me, that was an obvious example of what I'm talking about. The guy just happened to be there at the right time with his girlfriend in the food court in Plank. Now, if it was quote unquote part of the plan, you would have heard about it. You would have heard about it, and they would have turned it into, unfortunately, a race issue, although both the shooters were so-called white. But that is an obvious example, right? Something was nipped in the bud before it even happened. There are other examples of what I'm talking about that neither you nor I know about. And some potential disaster has been averted. And I see that here with Neptune coming at that time and trining, right? There's the trine there, the retrograde. It's sort of like the bit of the angel on the shoulder here. Then we have all these retrograde planets, except for, of course, Saturn and Pluto and the inner planets. The inner planets are all moving forward. But the outer planets are still in their retrograde phase and getting ready to end. Jupiter's getting ready to end, getting ready to go forward. But to me, this is the big kahuna that we're dealing with. Now, how does it affect you on an everyday? So this is money. To me, this is money. It's money and the financial system. I was talking with my good buddy Masaki. He says that Martin Armstrong says that the dollar will be strong up through 2024. That's quite possible. Quite possible. And we could see more disruptions monetarily, or certainly around that time. To me, it's just explosive. It's a very explosive energy. And some of you are asking, well, Robert, when is that day? What are we talking about here? Give me a second, and I will give you the. I think it's the 14th? I think it's the 14th. But let me be precise in my Virgoan share here. All right, so we have Mars at 21. That's actually yes, it is the 14th. Mars is at 22, and you could look at Monday. So the new moon is going to be on, looks like on Tuesday the 13th. So we have the new moon in Scorpio. So it'll either be late, it might be, I'd have to do a lunar ephemeris, but probably late Tuesday night, late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. And on Tuesday the 14th, the sun is at 21. The moon will be at 28. And then Mars will be at 22. So we have a stellium in Scorpio. Wow. Man, if they wanted to plan people's emotions, that would be the day to do it. Especially with the moon in Scorpio, the new moon in Scorpio. Like they could rack up body counts, really play on people's emotions during that time. That feels quite dramatic to me, that energy. Jupiter again is still retrograde, and Uranus will be retrograde at 21, just like we were talking about. Yeah. Now Venus brings us a little respite, as does Mercury, because Mercury will be at 4 Sagittarius that day. That's an interesting aspect, because Mercury will be out in front of all the scorpionic activity. And even though Mercury in Sagittarius is in its detriment, there's still something very much about Mercury in Sag that has the big high beams on. You know, people have Mercury in Sagittarius. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but they will say some of the most outlandish shit, right? Some of the most outlandish shit without any kind of basis or foundation for what they're saying. And it will be true, right? It will be true, but it's not like they've connected all the dots and they've put together all the scaffolding for it. It'll be true, and you'll kind of doubt it, or you'll call bullshit on it, And you'll say, well, how do you know? Well, I just know. I just know. And then a lot of the time, it'll happen, or it'll wind up being true. I mean, it's the beauty of Sagittarius, especially Mercury in Sagittarius. But there's always a danger. I wouldn't call it a danger, but there's always a sense that Mercury and Sagittarius can conflate. You know what I mean? It can conflate. So if there are stories with smaller details, Mercury and Sagittarius makes it larger. Let's just say Mercury and Sagittarius is Irish, because the Irish tell a good tale. And Mercury Sagittarius will always take the myth over the truth. That's just a practice, standard practice. So we have that. Now, the good side of that, or the upside of that, is that through the darkness, or through what's potentially quite dark, you have Mercury and Sagittarius, well, stating this quote unquote truth, right? But whose truth? Whose truth? Is it going to be the truth of networks? And now the networks are really in a war. They're really in a war. Now you've got MSNBC. There was a Joy Reid clip where she was backing people's rights to protest on the college campuses. So MSNBC is kind of wading in to the Palestinian protest position. Of course, there is disclaimer after disclaimer after disclaimer that they believe everybody has a right to life, and that any innocent child whose life has been taken under the spoils of war, barbarism, and terrorism is never accepted, nor will be condoned. They let you know. That's like, at the end of the pharmaceutical commercials, where they give you the disclaimer at the end, where the side effects for the thing you're taking are 100 times worse than the thing you're taking it for. Well, in that world with the news, they will give you the disclaimer up front, right? They will do. It's almost like it's like a legal tort in some ways, and then by the time they're done, then they can give you their opinion, and that's what she did. So here we go. We have Mercury in Sagittarius, and it's jockeying for the truth. It's interesting we use the word jockeying for the truth, and Sagittarius is related to horses, right? Jockeying for the truth. Oh, interesting. Interesting phrase, turn of phrase for Sagittarius. Anyway, it is jockeying for the truth. And you have Venus and Gemini. What's interesting about that time, there's a nice sextile between Mercury and Venus. Like cooler heads maybe prevail. Maybe. This is just me sitting from where I am here in sort of the heart of Texas, watching how all of this is unfolding. And I've never seen a situation where for all intents and purposes, wartime propaganda has gone so poorly. You know what I mean? Wartime propaganda has gone. Every time they have done this in the past, the whole Ukraine thing, they just stuck up on us. It was just like, look at this. Wow, there's that happening. Wow, we're all in, right? Like, can you really look to one event in Ukraine where it was like, oh, well, we've got to start this barbarism. We got to stop this torture. And, this man is inhuman. He's a global gangster and a thug. I follow this stuff pretty closely. I can't really think of the same kind of event that happened on October 7th. These are very different conflagrations. And so they built up the Putin bad guy thing for such a long time. It was all preloaded. So all they had to do was say, well, today, Putin's tanks and the demonic forces of Russia rolled into eastern Ukraine and retook regions in that part of the world, claiming that it belonged to Russia. Like, that's kind of how it went down. Of course, there was more hyperbole, but it wasn't like they were showing us hang gliding films from Egypt from 3 or 4 years ago. You know what I mean? It was a very different exercise in propaganda. And it's probably in some ways better that they did it that way, because they were able to soak all this money out of the U.S. And it's like, if they had an event that was, let's say on the equivalent scale of 9/11, or that maybe the event would have been like 9/11 being the ultimate 10 to go to war. That if they had an event in Ukraine, maybe all they would need would be about a 6 or a 7. I don't remember any clear event. So it wasn't put under the microscope of circumspection. It was just all about the buildup and just how everything had been Putin bad, Putin bad, Putin bad, Putin bad. They've been running the Putin bad program since 2016, when Saturn was going through the U.S. 12th house. I've done shows on this. Every time Saturn goes through the U.S. 12th house, not even prior, but there were always incidents with the former Soviet Union. The last time Saturn was in Sagittarius was just before the fall, right? So the fall of the wall all begins in 1989, and then 1990, Saturn's in Capricorn. But before that, Saturn was going through the U.S. 12th house, and there were machinations. It was different, but there were machinations. Like, it was Gorbachev and what was happening leading up to the Saturn and Capricorn transit. Now, if you go back and look at the 1950s, when Saturn was in Sagittarius, going through the U.S. 12th house, that was all, what's his name? The big bear, Khrushchev. And Khrushchev was basically saying, we will crush you. We will crush you. And that's when the Cold War was on. But then as Saturn moved into Capricorn again, what happened? Well, Khrushchev winds up kind of losing big as they entered into the whole Bay of Pigs thing. That's when Khrushchev eventually, that's a defeat for him. So the height, just like when Gorbachev it wasn't the height of the Soviet Union, but it was kind of the last stand of the Soviet Union. And then Saturn moves into Capricorn and everything dissolves. The same thing happened in the late 50s, Saturn and Sagittarius. There's all this stuff going on behind the scenes. And then, boom, things change. And then by the time 64 rolls around, Gorbachev is getting ready to retire in a little cottage somewhere outside of public service. And then they're dealing with Leonid Brezhnev. You go back again, you look at that Saturn transit through the 12th house. It was like, that's when they had the Russian Olympics. And all the bad mouthing started then. It was all badmouth Putin, badmouth Putin, badmouth. We need another boogeyman. And then Saturn came into Capricorn. And then when it came into Capricorn, it sort of backed off a little bit. Right? But it was still building. It wasn't like the kind of the height of this thing. But then it became the boogeyman. So there's these weird transits with Saturn and Sag, 12th house, first house, U.S. and Russia and the former Soviet Union. But that's how they launched this thing. It was really more about a bad reputation and a really dark aura versus any one single event. Now, that doesn't hold true in Israel, because there's no centralized figure in Gaza. Ask somebody who the head of Hamas is. If you're really following it, you may come up with it, maybe, but there is no head, right? It's just this entity, this kind of dark entity, just like any other dark entity that we've seen in the past, whether it's ISIS or ISIL, or whether it's Al Qaeda, or whether it's the Taliban, right? It's just another dark. And every now and then, you may have one guy pop up as some kind of a figurehead. But there was, and even if they were using the Putin model, they would have had to sort of back that truck up and start making this case that Hamas were horrible, inhuman butchers for the last year. But they couldn't because they were too invested in Ukraine, right? So once the Ukraine thing sort of fizzled out finally, now they put this thing into action very quickly. So I know we're kind of veering away from astrology a little bit, but the astrology is in there, right? The astrology is in there. And really where it's taking us is a much bigger place, which is all these transits in Aries that are coming. Saturn and Neptune in Aries, the eclipse in April, the nodes, particularly the true node in Aries, and Chiron. So Aries is a sign that is associated with war. Aries is the god of war. In astrology, we like to think of Aries as the first sign, the sign that represents action and will, immediacy, the masculine principle, right? No apologies, no regrets. That's Aries. And we know what the Aries, sort of the everyday look at Aries or of Aries is military to some degree or another. It's either military itself or it's cops, sheriffs, first responders are in the mix, right? That's all Aries stuff. Of course, some athletes, football clearly is an Aries sport, but it's way down the list here, right? So when we talk about Aries, we think about Rome and centurions, and we think of gladiators, right? Sparta. I mean, that to me, it typifies the archetypal expression of Aries. And we're going to be looking at that in this brief presentation that I put together so that we can kind of find out where we've been and where we are and where we might be going. All right, so why don't I get into that? And we're going to cover some Saturn direct tonight, also in Pisces. Do the stop share. All right. Okay, let's do this. All right, we have to do our best to look at astrology with a clear gaze and also to avert our bias as much as possible, but at the same time, be aware of what's in the air because it also influences the scope of events in our lives. Okay, where are we? I just had it. Okay, let me do this. Let me have a backup here. I got a backup. I just converted it. Okay, let me do the backup. There it is. All right. Well, that's not it. Is it? No. Here, let's do this. Okay, here we go. All right, we should have it. I don't know. Here, come on. All right. Sunday. Okay. Let's get rolling. So here we go. 1056. We're going to go all the way back. We're going to play with the idea for now that the timeline that we're talking about is more or less correct. Okay? So the date we're given here for the Crusades is 1056. Might have been 56. And they just could have tacked on the 10. But we're going to go 1056. Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. Guess what? That's where Saturn and Neptune were in 1056. So what happens? The Christians are expelled from Jerusalem in 1056. This is generally considered the beginning of the Crusades, which will last quite a long time. This will launch the first crusade, and then the second crusade was to essentially free these guys who had been there for over 100 years. I mean, this thing goes on for a couple of centuries, believe it or not. And they have another crusade to go in and because the Muslims come back and they take over again. And they're led by Saladin, who is brilliant. He's a brilliant strategist. And then really the Europeans had gotten kind of high in the hog in Jerusalem, right? And then, of course, the third crusade is led by Richard the Lionhearted, who routs the Saracens and becomes friends with our buddy. So this is the starting point. He becomes friends with Saladin, our buddy Saladin. They respected each other. They played chess together. Right. So this is really generally considered the starting point for the Crusades. So let's look at the chart. Now we're using Julian time here, or Julian calendar. And this is this is March 25th, 1056. This is generally considered the day that the Christians got kicked out. Now, what's really interesting about all of this, and we're going to get into this with another chart, is what happened to Jerusalem. Because the Romans had gone in and sacked Jerusalem and they destroyed Solomon's temple. And that's where we have the story of the diaspora. That the regional practitioners of Judaism, as they knew it then, probably very much more in alignment with a Babylonian mystery religion connected to things like the Zohar, right? That was a different, theoretically a different group. And Jerusalem gets sacked by the Romans, and then they're gone. Then they migrate. They migrated into places like Europe, right? And who winds up taking over? The Romans eventually leave because of the fall of Rome, even though Constantinople still outlived Rome, which was the kind of its twin counterpart. The Romans could not control Jerusalem, so the Muslims took over, and that's how they got there. They came to Jerusalem kind of in a void, right? And that's how the Al-Aqsa Mosque gets built there. That's how it gets built in Jerusalem, because they were in possession of it. So what's interesting about this chart is, again, I want you to keep an eye on Saturn right there in Aries. This is total fucking crusade energy, by the way. All this Aries, Saturn in Aries, and then Neptune. Now, granted, it's at the end of Aries, but we're talking a conjunction, a wide conjunction. This is about as close as it gets, by the way. And then, oh, look, there's the true node, also in Aries, which is where we are now. And what's it look like they're trying to do now? It looks to me like they're trying to set up a war between the Christians and the Muslims again. So when you look at these aspects, well, we got Saturn, but will be in Aries. The true node we have in Aries right now, and Neptune will be in Aries. Bada bang, right? Now, Pluto will eventually, next year, full-time, move into Aquarius. It's just a reference point, because we know that Pluto is going to be a much earlier degree, no doubt. But I just wanted to show you, because it's an interesting kind of reference point. And then here, Uranus is in the opposite sign of where Uranus is now, which is in Taurus. But I thought this was a really interesting chart, because of the fact that we're going to be dealing with Saturn and Neptune and a lot of these same conditions. So you can see it right there. Boom. This is when the Crusades officially start. All right. Now we look at when the Crusades were officially won. The first Crusades, 1099. 1099. Okay. What are we looking at here? Well, we got the Sun in Aries, Leo. Now, again, we're not dealing with Neptune in Aries, but we're dealing with Aries again in Pluto. Pluto in Aries. Right there, right? So we could also make a case here that through the crown, Leo, and the guy who theoretically reclaimed Jerusalem was, I believe, Godfrey of Bullion, like gold. And he was only, now there's some interesting stories about him, and that he only lived, like they conquered Jerusalem in August, and he only lived until January. Now, there are reports that he actually died in the fighting, and then that was from the Muslim side of things. But you could see that the power of the crown, right? And at that time, the crown was also very much embedded in the church, and the power of the crown was prevailing. And Godfrey of Bullion was descended from royalty. I've got a picture of him in a statue. He's I think it was France, but now it's part of Belgium. Right. So this is 1099. There's a new century happening, right? New century happening. And now the Christians are in charge of the Holy Land. Uranus and Taurus. So the Uranus cycles seem to be interesting here too. Like we just saw Uranus in the opposition. So we go back here. Here's Uranus at 13. And then we have Uranus opposition at 11. So halfway through that Uranus cycle, you have theoretically the completion of the first crusade. Pretty interesting. And even the true node in Sagittarius, which is, of course, religious and philosophical, it has the day. It's in trine with the sun at 24 Leo. So this is the day that Europe and Christendom reclaims Jerusalem. And there's Godfrey of Bouillon. Good old Godfrey. They have a statue of him in Belgium. I'm pretty sure they won't tear it down or burn him. But you can say that he was not just a colonizer, but a religious colonizer at that. Okay, so I wanted to throw this up here. This is when they had the siege of Jerusalem. And this is when the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans. So we're talking April 14th. This is year 70. And again, what's interesting is Neptune and Aries. So we have Neptune and Aries here, where essentially this kind of stronghold of Christianity, the kind of the holdover, the leftovers from the Roman days, right? They're gone. And we can see Neptune playing a role here. But even before that, it's a previous Neptune cycle, also in Aries, which is, to me, it's fascinating. And then you also have Pluto in Aquarius again. Not early degrees like we're going to be dealing with, but here are two instances where Neptune was in Aries and Pluto was in Aquarius. And these are seismic events, seismic historical events, culture-changing events, time-changing events. And what are they trying to do now? They're trying to resurrect this and bring in the third temple. Keep in mind, Neptune and Aries, we've seen it happen twice now. And where's Neptune headed? It's headed into Aries. Saturn here is in opposition, which is interesting because when this thing goes off, ultimately Saturn and Neptune will be conjunct. What's also interesting here is that this is the degree. Now they started in April, but they didn't complete the destruction of the temple until September. I think it was September 9th. But what's interesting is that this degree of Saturn is the same degree as Israel's ascendant. There's no earth in the sky here. It's just, look at all this fire and air. And Solomon's temple is pretty combustible. Which this picture, of course, is a rendering and a painting, and it's kind of a brilliant one. And I chopped it off by about 2/3. And if this is a reasonable depiction of how this went down, there were lots of people there. Lots of people. But again, Pluto in Aquarius. So we've had one event, 1056. Another event. Oh, sorry. Another event. There was Pluto in Aries. Another event, much earlier than that, in the year 70. So the two constants here are Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius. Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius. It's coming. It's coming. We're going to have both those outer planets in those signs by the end of 2025. Also bringing Saturn into the mix. So Rome destroys the temple. All right, let's talk Albert Pike. So Albert Pike, as many of you know, is a master Mason and beyond, 33rd degrees and beyond. He wrote Morals and Dogma, which is the guide to the Scottish Rite ascension of Freemasons. He was a Civil War general. He apparently spoke multiple languages. Like he could speak English, French, Italian, Spanish, German. He could speak them all. He was incredibly intelligent. And he was known to have a letter that he had written to a guy by the name of Mazzini. And Mazzini was also a Mason. Pike, Mazzini, and I think it was Otto von Bismarck. They were all Freemasons. And they all corresponded together. And he wrote a letter to Mazzini out outlining all these wars. And so this is Pike. And what's interesting about Albert Pike is that in the summer of 2020, there's a statue of Albert Pike not far from the White House. And during the time that the youth of America was remodeling the statuary of America, eventually some very, very zealous youth, perhaps overzealous, tore down Pike's statue. It was the only statue that Trump said needed to be replaced, and was, and has remained untouched since then. That tells you the importance of Albert Pike. Albert Pike is also generally regarded as one of the founders of the KKK. So you had Albert Pike, who, for all intents and purposes, fits the profile of an uber racist with built-in white privilege. And not coincidentally, his statue was torn down. However, unlike the fate of other Masons, such as Christopher Columbus, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, his statue was replaced. Theirs wasn't. If you're not familiar with the letter, basically what Pike says is that, do I have this up here on the screen? Yes, I do. He basically outlines World War I, World War II, and World War III. And in World War III, the Christians will be pitted against the Muslims. And it will be an all-out, brutal, savage affair in which the God-fearing, turn-the-other-cheek Christians would have to spill numerous amounts of blood. Just like Donald Trump said the other day when he said buckets of blood. That's right. That's what he said, buckets of blood. And that the Christians would win, but because they had to resort to such savagery, such butchery, such absolute venal contempt of their enemy, their foe, that their souls would be hollowed out. And at that moment, where the existential crisis, where the great void would enter the mind of man, and not the great void that the Zen monks talk about, the great void of nothingness, the dark black hole of somebody like, I don't know, Kierkegaard maybe, the existential black hole, that then the new masters of the world would come along and give them a new religion. And that religion would be the religion of Lucifer, that it would uplift them. And this was the plan, because they would have to terminate all of the world's religions at that point. Now, I don't know how much Judaism was playing a role during that time. To be honest with you, it was always in the background. And after the temple got sacked and the regional caste of Jews in that territory went on the diaspora to Europe, it was not a religion in ascendancy. It would come back online with the introduction of a new group of followers that would be later on. But it was not in ascendancy. So really the two religions that were being at a fundamental level that were being discussed and programmed ultimately for the future was Christianity and Islam, because historically we could see that there had already been a conflagration there. What's interesting about Godfrey of Bouillon, I was reading this as I was preparing for the show, that they would go through towns in Europe, and if they were Jews in the towns, they would kill the Jews in the towns, and then the Jews would find out that Godfrey of Bouillon and these other crusaders were coming through town, and they would pay them and say, "Hey, just leave us alone." Okay, they'd pay them tribute, say, "Just leave us alone," and they probably paid them fairly well, and then they went on their merry way, right? So it gives you an idea of, if you're looking at the three Abrahamic religions at that time, one wasn't even in Israel. You know, they were in towns in Europe, basically, you know, hiding behind a corner in case the Crusaders came through. If they did, here's some money, just keep going, right? So when Pike was talking about this, I don't think it was that group was really part of the discussion. It was this historical conflagration between the Christians and the Muslims. Now, along the way, Christianity bifurcates into all these various versions of the faith. And in Islam, you basically have two main groups. You have the Sunnis and the Shiites, or the Shia. And the Shiites are the ones who are much more extreme. And one of the things that's been a problem for Islam to get its act together is the internal conflict between the Sunnis and the Shiites. But now when you triangulate and you have the enemy of my enemy is my friend, now you have the Sunni and the Shiites possibly coming together so that they can join forces against the United States and the colonizers in Israel, right? Now Albert Pike, I don't think, had this in mind when all this started, because I'd have to go back historically and look at when Ibn Isa basically created Saudi Arabia. Let's look at his chart. So here, this is a Pike's chart, and he's a Capricorn. He's got that Sun Mercury conjunction 7-7, and he's got Jupiter in Aries. So again, Aries is a theme here. We're looking at Aries as the through line for war. And not only that, but he's got the South Node in Aries. He's a conjurer. He's a conjurer. And he's got that weird Mars Chiron conjunction. That's a really weird conjunction. You know, not a lot of people have that conjunction. I've done a lot, I mean, in Aquarius. I've done a lot of charts. I haven't seen a lot of Mars Chiron conjunctions. Pretty unusual, actually. And my takeaway from that is somebody who, you know, Aquarius has this potential of being just ice cold and clinical. You think Gemini can be clinical. Aries is even more clinical and ice cold. Aries can be icy, right? It's Uranus. It's way out there. And here we have Chiron conjuncting Mars. And it just, to me, it just feels like, and again, we're trying to look at this through the lens. We know who Pike is. But to me, this just feels like by any means necessary. That's the aspect of kind of the greater good. Who cares if we have to slaughter a few million? That's the way it is. And Aries just gives that chilly kind of objectivity around it all. And then you throw in Venus in Sagittarius, and we know Sagittarius can be very dogmatic. In fact, he wrote Morals and Dogma. Throw that Venus in there. So he's got people that, and again, I just use a 12 noon chart. He's got people that are willing to row in the same direction as him. Remember, we were talking about Saturn in Sagittarius earlier on? That's interesting. Again, another Saturn-Neptune conjunction. 1809 in Sagittarius. He would be an agent of Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. The dissolving of structures, religions, faiths, creeds, and he would be a conjurer. He would be a conjurer of will, right? That's what Aries is. Aries is the magician. And I guarantee you, Albert Pike saw himself as a mage, a master mage. And he's got some squares, right? He's got that Jupiter Sun square. It kind of conflates who he is. That's how Jupiter Sun squares work. There's a conflation. It makes the individual sometimes bigger than they are, and they'll take risks when it comes to it. And he has that moon in Libra, which he's supposed to be fair, squaring his sun. Fair, I'll make it fair as long as it's on my own terms. It's a very interesting chart. It's not entirely imbalanced. It would be fascinating to the Pluto and Pisces would be a dead giveaway because just how far away Pluto is. But some of these aspects are kind of contemporary, right? This is Uranus in Scorpio and Neptune in Sagittarius. We saw those during sort of Gen X. But those are Gen X aspects. Saturn in Sagittarius comes along in the 50s, and then it comes along again 30 years later. So middle 80s, right? So you can even consider that so 3 Gen X aspects right there. That's interesting. Very interesting. So he'd need Pluto and Libra to be complete Gen X, but he's not, of course. But to me, it's this Jupiter South Node conjunction. Again, the conjurer, right? The conjurer, the mage. And then we're dealing with Neptune-Saturn conjunction, just like we're going to be dealing with Neptune-Saturn conjunction moving forward. All right. Speaking of moving forward, is Christian nationalism rising? Do we have anything else besides this? Is my last slide. Is Christian nationalism rising? It's a good question. It's a really good question. Now, what I've tried to show you in prior times when we've had this religious feeling, Saturn and Neptune in Aries, Neptune in Aries, this is the onward Christian soldier kind of mentality. Saturn is the planet of sacrifice. Neptune is the planet of the scapegoat and the resurrection. And they come in oh, this is the eclipse. Yeah, this is the eclipse. And they come in a package together. So this is the eclipse of 2024, right? So eventually what's going to happen is that Neptune and Saturn will migrate into Aries, which we've talked about. But this is all the eclipse energies. Moon, Sun, 1919 Aries. And eventually, again, Neptune and Saturn will merge, as will the trio will be in Pisces during that time. So let me see if I can go back and find another example of this. Give me 1 second. And I was thinking about the actual look of the eclipse, right? Which is, I got to bring it up for effect here that I had on my desktop. Okay. So we're just looking at the 2 total eclipses. And the one that we had just recently was annular, which means that it was not a total eclipse. Doesn't mean it wasn't powerful. It was plenty powerful. But it wasn't a total eclipse. So we're just looking at the total eclipses. So let me do this and then give you the symbolism here. You guys know this. right? You know that we're dealing with a cross. And the last eclipse that we experienced came down here. It came from here to here. And what did it cross? Across Corpus Christi, which is the corpse of the body of Christ, right? When I see this, I see a cross. And the cross, let me see if I can, let's do this. Oops, my bad, hold on. Oh, well, we're all screwed up. Now we're totally screwed up. Here's let me do this. Right, so here we have a cross. You can kind of see it a bit better. Looks like fucking Cyrillic. Let me get rid of this. I want to do a better one. My bad, sorry about that. Come on. There you go. All right, let's do it again. There we go. So there's the cross again. It's a cross. And what is Christianity known for? Right? The cross. And looking at this and looking at all of these past astrological markers, specifically for the start of the Crusades, when Saturn and Neptune were in a wide conjunction in Aries, and the evacuation of the last of the Christians from Jerusalem, I could easily see this energy morphing into a type of Christo-nationalism. I could see it, right? Like if you look at how this conflagration that's taken place is being broken down. You have all these people on the right. There are 70 million evangelicals in this country. 70 million. And a large dose of them are invested in Holy Crusade. And the Holy Crusade being that they want Israel intact so that they can have their little rapture story. That's part of it. But the infiltration of what we would call Zionism has made its way into the church, in as much as it's made its way into Americans who are yearning for a national identity. And that's really what Zionism is all about. It is a national identity. It is not a religious identity. In fact, it is in opposition with the more religious groups, sects, and people of Israel that live there. All you had to do was watch that little skirmish that happened in Jerusalem last week, where you had the Orthodox protesters protesting for the Palestinians. And the IDF went in there and stuck a boot to their heads. So Zionism is not a religion. It is a state-sponsored religion, or a sponsored religion of the state, which is what it is. And here in the United States, people have been really hungry for an idea of nationalism, a country that they can relate to. And Trump made huge inroads into people's lives because of his whole MAGA philosophy. It was like somebody finally, well, Ron Paul was telling you a long time ago, and so was Pat Buchanan. But Trump came along with the right package, the right blitz, the right glam, and the right marketing behind him. He spent what, like 6 years on The Apprentice, just priming for this moment in time. And that philosophy was something that people were really hungry for. And that philosophy was always linked. Well, it wasn't always linked. But if you go back to Nixon, when Nixon's the first really hardcore Republican, like Dwight Eisenhower was a Republican, but he wasn't hardcore. Nixon was hardcore. And he has the neocons come in and help him. And so this is where it all gets launched, right? This is where this whole idea of the neocons and sort of the Zionistic affiliation with the nation state starts to come into play. And there's this synthesis and this melding between those ideas and patriotic ideas. And so what's happened is that they've created this weird synthesis and hybrid that if you are someone with a nationalist identity, that if you get probably more of a pass being a nationalist, if either directly or indirectly you're also a Zionist, because that is the sort of the operating system that is trying to establish itself in Israel above and beyond all these other groups that are there. So you cannot take out this Zionist worldview from this idea in modern America in 2023 of being engaged in somebody who wants to be a part of a nation state. Well, they do it. This is the only democracy in the Middle East. Well, they're our friends. They're our friends in the Middle East, and we have to support them because that is the mind virus that has gotten into this idea of being an American. Now it's like this weird fusion and hybrid. Then you throw the religious part in, and the religious part, this is the undertone of the religious part on the evangelical side. It's also racist. And I don't use that word lightly, right? It's racist because it's not just Muslims. Those are some brown Muslims, right? They're brown Muslims. And look, if you're an evangelical and you're somehow watching this, right? I'm not saying that every evangelical is a racist, but I've seen interviews where they cannot reconcile their belief in whatever's happening in Israel as a Zionist occupied state. They can't reconcile that with their own beliefs around Christianity, which is we're all one as God's children. Doesn't matter what skin color you are. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, that is really the universal creed and coda. It's not reconciled. It's like there is an enemy there because that enemy is the enemy of this country that we relate to. And this is where this is all, in my estimation, why I'm talking about it is because we were getting closer to the potential of a Christo-fascist state. And we can see it with Saturn. I've been trying to lay this out here with Saturn and Neptune and Aries. And Saturn becomes an organizing principle. And Neptune dissolves, right? So we can look at the structure of our current situation, and it could be so incredibly bad that it would take an absolute, utter strongman to turn everything around. And I guarantee you that that person could not be elected without some, or even placed into power without some relationship when it comes to faith. And Donald Trump is a really good example of this. Donald Trump was never known to be a great quote unquote Christian. And in fact, there's a video that went around the internet where Donald Trump was asked by a pastor, and he was asked, have you ever gotten on your knees and begged for redemption from God? And Trump sort of talked around it, and he talked about God, and He talked about how when he and his first wife got married, and how they were married by, Norman Vincent Peale, who's a Mason, right? He's trying to establish his religious credentials, but he doesn't do a really good job saying, yeah, I had that moment, my life was a mess. I was going through my second divorce. Marla and I had a child, and that didn't work out. I was going through all these bankruptcies. And I got to tell you, Chuck, I got on my knees and I prayed to our Lord Jesus Christ. And I said, I'm at my darkest hour, and I don't know what to do. Lift me up, dear Lord, lift me up. And, and that's when I was saved, Chuck. He didn't say any of that, right? Because that's not how he is. And, what's interesting is he knew well enough, like Trump will say a lot of things, but he knew well enough not to welch on that, right? Not to confabulate that story. So fast forward, what happens with Trump? He gets adopted by the evangelical community. He gets adopted by Paula White and all these people, and there are pictures of Trump where they're laying hands on him and everything. And who knows, maybe that helped him. Maybe that helped him survive everything. But in order, ultimately, this is where I think this is going, and this is why tonight's show is based on it. In order for somebody in the future under these conditions, and they won't exist until the end of 2025, but the eclipse, which is coming in 24, and this cross, the crossroads, potentially the cross of Christianity, plays a role in all of this. And when I'm telling you, I looked at Mike Johnson's chart. Was it last week? And I'm thinking, Mike Johnson has all the credentials in a lot of ways of being the leader, not Donald Trump, Mike Johnson. He's an Aquarian, right? So he's going to represent something new, a break from the mold. And we haven't had an Aquarian president since Roosevelt, right? And when Roosevelt was president, he was revolutionary, and not in a good way. And we talked about how Mike Johnson was Gen X, and we brought this part back up too. And he would be the type of guy, he's just bathed in these evangelical waters. And it would take something like that to both set the country on its moral compass and also begin to remove the quote unquote undesirables. Because that's one thing that I think, again, that when you get into the kind of the hardcore Christian view, it can be very, very rigid. It's not like Unitarian Christianity here, okay? It's not. I live here in the hill country. Trust me. I'd be considered a warlock. But this is where I think there's this potential of this going, right? Because whatever happens with Saturn and Neptune and Aries, there is both a dissolution of one structure, but then also the formation of another structure in a potential superstructure. And again, we're just looking at these trends moving forward and looking back at this crusade energy from a previous time. The Crusades began with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Now, we're already kind of on the brink of, for all intents and purposes, a holy war. And then look at what's been happening since, 2011? The flood of migrants, not just any migrants, Islamic migrants into Europe, into the US. It's been nonstop since 2011. This is 2023. It's been going on for 12 years. 12 years. It's a long time. And again, if this thing goes full tilt boogie and we're in that Saturn Neptune first days of the crusade energy, look out, right? This has the potential of being cataclysmic. And I'm not here to dog Islam or have any Islamophobia, right? But that said, you keep poking the dog over and over again, the dog is going to snap back. And whatever religion or faith, there are always extreme elements inside of those religions and faith. You know, we talked about inside of Judaism, sometimes there are groups inside of Judaism that are very extreme. You have them in Christianity. You certainly have them in the Catholic Church. You've got like Opus Dei inside the Catholic Church. You know, and you have more extreme sects are part of larger groups. They always have been. There's always, you know, this kind of breakaway group that is way more extreme. And then what they do is they try to recruit more power. So this is what we're dealing with now. And, you know, it's looking more and more like we're on the brink of another quote unquote holy war based on these aspects. Neptune and Aries, I showed you two of them. Anyway, we'll find out, won't we? We will find out. The real wild card in all this is Uranus, and Uranus going into Gemini. That is a major wild card, and that comes into the mix again at the end of 2025. And they didn't have Uranus and Gemini during these other transits, these really, really old, long transits. It wasn't part of the mix. That's the wild card. That's what I'm looking for. In the meantime, it's going to be really, I just keep coming back. We're going to have another ingress in Pluto and Aquarius, and she'll get weird again. And then it retrogrades one more time back into Pluto and Capricorn. And then it goes back into Aquarius again. And she'll have a real weird stretch coming up with the next Pluto ingress. And it's during those weird pockets where people can, like things just don't go according to plan. Okay, so go back in time and remember when Pluto was in Aquarius. So we were going to have, I think it was during June, and all of June was going to be Pride Month. And we had Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light, and that's when Pluto was in Aquarius. And the shit went sideways. It was like too weird. You know, people were just boycotting Bud Light, right? Starbucks shut their promotion down like the day that Pluto retrograded back into Capricorn. It was like, a month of this? No, we can't take a month of this. It's going to ruin our business, right? So things got really weird, and people saw it as like, fuck, this is really fucking weird. We're not into it. That's the one upside of Pluto and Aquarius. Like, people are going to see how weird things are. And sometimes high strange is really hard to handle. It's really hard to handle. And that's not a bad thing. You know, chaos can be your friend. Doesn't always have to be an agency of wanton destruction. You know, there's a reason why it's called chaos magic, because out of chaos, people are able to use the energy and conjure up situations according to, you know, these random elements that are out of place. And when things are out of place, they have energy. Now, the energy doesn't last long. It dissipates. Okay. Maybe I'm 2 hours. All right. Let's talk quickly about Saturn going into Pisces. Now, do I think America is going to become a Christo-fascist state? I think there's a possibility, honestly. I mean, I think there's a possibility. I also think that, again, there could just be too much competing high strange for it to happen. And I also think the litmus is, you know, where will the evangelicals and the people that are supporting this ongoing conflagration, it would really be okay with I think a Christian nationalist state. We'll call it nationalist. Where would they chime in on the CBDC? Where would they be when it comes to something like that? Maybe they could gin up the CBDC and make it look like it was something that would make sure that people weren't participating in evil, right? And then you get somebody like, what's his name, Hagee. Is it John Hagee or the guy from San Antonio? You get the Hagees of the world, the Kenneth Copelands of the world, all these major evangelicals, the T.D. Jakes of the world, and they back it. They could back it. They can back the CBDC and tell their flocks that, this is a great gift from God. This is not mammon. This is not the 40 pieces of silver that led to the execution of our Lord and Savior. This takes us out of that realm. This takes us out of that realm of false idol worship. If I was a pastor and I was on the government payroll and I was being told to get people to accept the CBDC, that would be my sermon. That would be my sermon. Oh, great. You mean, those 40 pieces of silver? Right. Okay. Yeah. That silver was overrated anyway. But it'll be interesting. I think that'll be the litmus. If we go down that path. And I've been watching it, I watched Jason Whitlock. And Jason Whitlock treads kind of lightly on this idea of this Christian nationalist kind of state. He's kind of, he's a bit on the cusp of it. And that's, and look, in a world, I think, where you put God first is going to be a better world. I'm just going to say that straight up. But how that God is interpreted is another real struggle, in the struggle that has really kept us separated from the times our tongues were divided after the fall of the Tower of Babel. All right, let's talk a little Saturn and Pisces. Okay, here we go. Come on, and touch me, babe. Do-do-do. I am not afraid. What was that found? Why don't you tell me? I'm just looking something up here. Uno momentito. So in the Sapien symbols, we need to look at Aries 30 and Pisces 1 to get a kind of a symbolic understanding of Saturn and Pisces at 0 degrees. So why don't we take a look at Aries 30 first? Because we know that, let's see, let's go to Aries 30 and then we'll go to 0 Pisces. Okay. Aries 30, the next degree over in root year is 1 Pisces, or in the symbols. Let's look at them both. All right. A duck pond and its brood. The realization of natural boundaries. After the preceding symbol, this may seem anticlimactic. It's music of the spheres. What is shown here is that every form of activity has its limits. Saturn limits. And that even the consciousness has been able to get a glimpse of universal order has to bring down its own karmic field of operation. The message of harmony, it is heard inwardly. Peace and inner contentment with one's essential destiny, dharma, is required to meet the everyday world. The mystic may experience flights of imagination and transcendent vision, but he must return to the concrete earth and to his task in his social environment. Extensive as the latter may seem, it is still very small compared to the galactic field. It is indeed a duck pond compared to the ocean, but it is there that the substance for concrete action has to be found. And in every effective activity has to be focused. Thus, the boundaries imposed by the very nature of this activity have to be consciously accepted. This is a very interesting symbol. Number one, all water is Pisces, although a duck pond tends to be more Cancerian than Pisces. And what Rudyard is getting at here is limitation. And we know Saturn limits. So let me go back and read this. Extensive as the latter may seem, it is still very small compared to the galactic field. It is indeed a duck pond compared to the ocean, but it is there that the substance for concrete action has to be found, and every effective activity has to be focused. Thus, the boundaries imposed by the very nature of this activity have to be consciously accepted. So what this symbol infers is that there's the potential for progress, but the progress may be much more condensed and focalized than a much broader and expansive field of potential. I would say, as this relates to Saturn and Pisces, that anything that you do that is undertaken with conscious awareness, focalized intent, is going to be rewarded. So this may not be a time of really big wins, but it is a time of moving forward, especially with the retrograde, kind of having to deal with things not moving forward. This moves forward, but it moves forward slowly. And it moves forward with a sense of purpose. And in Pisces, Pisces is not divorced from the spiritual potential. So it's not like you're just doing something every day just to fucking do it, right? You're making finite progress with the idea that the things that you're doing with the finite progress are connected to something higher, something that is associated with your faith, something that gives you a sense of purpose. And look, who knows? Maybe you get on a good roll with your transits and you can accomplish something grand, magnificent, and expansive. That's not what this degree of the Sabian symbols is about. It's about moving forward with a sense of limitation, but with also a great sense of attention and care. Because you know that a duck pond and its brood, there's got to be a mother for the brood who takes care and dotes over those ducks. This is the last stage of the last fivefold sequence related to the second scene characterized by potency. It leads to the third scene, whose keyword is substantiation. Potency has to become substantiated. It has to mate with substance in order to be effective power. Power must accept the principle of focalization. So for all you people out there who feel bogged down, who feel like the everyday world or the big world, the big picture world is too daunting, this is actually a really good symbol. Take one step at a time. One step at a time. And then do it with purpose and conscious awareness. All right. I tripped out a little bit there for a minute. And I was thinking, it just popped into my brain. I was thinking more about this Mars-Sun conjunction and the opposition with, this whole thing can be really, really like explosive. I remember I was talking about the explosive nature of that opposition. But Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty in all these counts. And he's like looking at something like fucking 6 lifetimes. Do you think that Sam Bankman-Fried is going to just do his time, do his bid? Is he going to appeal? I think this has tremendous ramifications inside of the people that were sending money to Ukraine, because we know Bankman-Fried was deep in the heart of that mix. I've seen a list of people that supposedly made money off this thing. I can't vouch for its veracity or truth, but it's there, and a lot of people did, and they made significant amounts of money. And they made the significant amounts of money so they could keep it afloat. But keep in mind, Joseph Robinette Biden is a Scorpio. Hillary Clinton's a Scorpio. Hunter Biden's an Aquarius, which is square Scorpio. Bill Clinton's a Leo, which is square Scorpio. So the Clintons and the Bidens are in this mix. They're in this mix. Bill Leo, Hillary Scorpio, Joe Scorpio, Hunter Aquarius. And then you have Taurus over there, right? Taurus is the nutcracker. It's the walnut cracker, right? Uranus and Jupiter in the square is the walnut cracker. This is big. This is big. And when stuff like that happens in the background, they always need a massive distraction. Massive distraction. That's why I think this Sun-Mars conjunction is very intense. The potential for it is staggering, especially when you look at and take into account that Bankman-Fried is a Pisces. Oh, and Saturn's going direct now. Maybe they spend all that Saturn retrograde time, getting the goods on Bankman-Fried. Because I guarantee you, there are people who lost big money in FTX, and they weren't the people that were on the receiving end of the little money laundering scheme they had there. So you always have to be aware of who you're pissing off. And if you're making something, there's many cases, especially if it's done at somebody else's expense, somebody else is losing because of that. So this is a very interesting development. Very, very interesting. Anyway, Saturn direct in Pisces. Let's round it off. Move forward in faith, one step at a time. Do things with purpose. Do things with a sense of the sacred, which is what Pisces is. Be intentional. Be very intentional. That's something I got to tell myself because I got 10,000 things going on. But be intentional. Whatever you do, slow down and do it well. Slow down and think about in that moment that you're doing the thing. Think about this idea of God participating and co-creating with you in that moment. And then it's not just you. The other thing too is that if we take our time and we focalize our intention, that in many ways we are honoring God within us, right? We're not being what's the word, slapdash. We're not being sloppy, right? We're honoring sort of the intentional power of creation inside of us. And it's a bit of a reset here. Saturn goes back to 0. Didn't go back to 2 or 3 or 1. It went back to 0, right? 0. So the Aries 1 for Saturn has to do, it's an interesting symbol, but it's not as interesting as this. It has to do with people selling their wares at a bazaar, kind of like, you know, the merchants in the temple. Although it doesn't go that far with that symbol. All right. Where are we? Where are we? We're here. We are here. Stop share. All right. Is the stream still going? What happened to the stream? Normally, you can see how many people are in. Oh, hold on. Let me get the other solo layout. Usually, I can see how many people are in chat. Here we go. Serve others or use others to serve yourself. Your choice. I like that. I like that. Caroline is a polyamorous homunculus. Another 222 in chat, 355 in chat. Oh, good. New covenant, new creation, second birth in divine life, adoption into God's household. I like that. 350 in chat. All right, we're good. I couldn't see. I felt like it was frozen there for a moment. I like that. That's good. Because, if we do this, this is the other side of this, right? If we do this, we don't have to belong to a kind of a Christian nationalist ethno-state. We're capable. We're quite capable as being able to do this on our own. And, I try not to hype our events too much, that we have every year in August. But there are people in chat who will back me up on this. And that when we get together during that time, there's no like holy roller stuff going on. But I can tell you that every single person that's there is in a true kind of namaste mode, without the trappings. And everybody treats each other exceptionally, exquisitely. And everybody is taking responsibility for their own creation during those 3 days. And nobody has to tell anybody what to do. I mean, yeah, there's a schedule and I focalize things and everything. But, when we connect into that, the vibration of God within, which is really, I think, what Saturn and Pisces has got to be. When we connect with that, we're bypassing the quote unquote old school spiritual networks or the old school religious networks, which was really what the original message was. That's what it was. That it lives inside of us, right? It lives inside of us. And when we're conscious and aware and we're able to work at that level, right, that's when things get really interesting. And the problem is that we've had a lot of middlemen. A lot of middlemen come in, and middle women too, but mostly middlemen come in and hijack the process. And it's disempowering. Like every now and then we need somebody to bounce things off of and to listen to and give us good quality feedback to help us kind of maneuver. But by and large, it is a thou relationship. And I think Saturn and Pisces has the potential for resetting that. Remember when Saturn went into Pisces, there was that movie. It was the Jesus Revolution. It was like, hello, right? When Saturn went into Pisces, you had that church in, I think it was Kentucky, where everybody was like just overcome with the presence of this service that they did. And then they had to shut it. It started to spread, right? So get ready for another wave of this kind of heightened sense of spirit, but also get ready for this other thing that's going on in the macro, in the hijacking of it, you know, with these holy wars that they're trying to cook up again. All right. You guys know how to operate. When you really, really think about who you are and what the divine emanation is within you, you know how to operate. And now we're going to get to really try this thing out, because we'll be tested. We're going to be tested with this Saturn and Pisces as well. And, you know, will you succumb to a spiritual authority or the authority of the state, which could theoretically abrogate your own spiritual authority, the authority to be free, to have your own mind, right? To speak freely, express the truth as you see fit. All that stuff is on the line right now, by the way. You know, they're whether it's Islamophobia or whether it's hate speech laws, right? All that stuff is getting cooked up. It has nothing to do with truth. It has to do with putting shackles on people so that they can't express the truth freely. All right. You know what to do. Just do it. Let's see. I'm going to do a little pitch here for my guy, Chris at True Hemp Science. I love the banner. I feel so self-satisfied when I see this banner. So True Hemp Science is the only sponsor we have of the show, or for the show, besides me, a working astrologer, if you'd like to get a reading. I also have an astrology course. It's a very good course. It's also a very affordable course. It's a 16-hour course you can download. The details are on the YouTube page here. But if you want to get some CBD, not just any CBD, I'm going to eat my goodies tonight, my CBD gummies. Go to truehempscience.com. You spend $100 or more and just type in 15 minutes and 15 MINS right there. And you'll get free goodies with your order. So you can get alcohol-based, water-based, spagyrics, gummies, you name it. Our friend Chris has it. $150 or more get you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. Got to throw that in here at the end of the show so that you guys can receive the benefits of some of the finest CBD on God's creation. All right. I'm out of here. Thank you for being here, mods. As always, thank you for your stellar work. And everybody else who shows up here. And big thanks to Dr. J for all your love and support. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to step in what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I'll be back on Tuesday with the Astro weather. Should be getting real good as we get closer to that Sun-Mars conjunction. Until then, take good care. Bye for now.